that kind of brings me to, and I didn't intend on talking about this tonight, but now that I'm thinking of it, you guys all heard what Tua said about Brian Flores. What are your thoughts on what? I'm gonna go to you, Josh. We haven't talked to you a lot today.
Yeah.
Josh, what are your thoughts on what Tua said to Brian Flores?
Yeah, give me the hard one. That's cool. Honestly, I think it was. I'm trying to be real politically correct here because I know this is a very sensitive subject with Dolphins fans, but I liked it. I think, I liked seeing this side of Tua, this confident guy who's come out of the stuff that he went through, a better man, a better husband, a better player, a better leader, we could just keep going on and going on. And I think, it's important that, it's important for us fans to understand that he did not actively seek out a way to discuss this. He was on an interview. Dan Le Batard asked him, and he was very candid. And I love someone that is honest and open and transparent. And I think if you look at what Brian Flores' reaction was at his media session with the Vikings, it confirmed everything that Tua said. There was a lot of questions with us fans when it all went down, or some of us fans, when it all went down. Well, is Tua embellishing? Is the media blowing it out of proportion? And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think his reaction to what Tua said squashed all of that. And, understand that it's old school football and all of this other stuff. But, I have my own opinions about Brian Flores as a coach. I was not a fan from the beginning. I think he's a phenomenal defensive mind. I think he was horrible as a head in the head coach role, because it is a lot more than X's and O's. And I think his response showed.
You know what, Josh, I honestly couldn't agree with you more. Now, I liked Brian Flores when he was here because I liked that, the tank for 2 a year. The Dolphins were supposed to be terrible. They're supposed to get blown out by teams week in, week out. And they showed some fight towards the end of that season. And that's what Brian Flores is all about right there. And that was an indictment on Brian Flores, But I will say this. He at one point he hired co-offensive coordinators in Eric Stutesville and Charles Godsey, and that was just a really questionable move in my mind. And I just don't think he has an offensive enough mind to be a head coach. I don't think he's diplomatic enough to be a head coach either. You have to kind of be able to. You have to kind of coexist with people in your building, whether it be the GM or the scouting director or your offensive coaches. If you're a defensive coach, your defensive coaches, if you're an offensive coach. That's where I think Brian Flores was lacking as a head coach.
Yep. And if I can add one more thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to understand this piece of it. At least for me, it was when I was doing all of this research into him after the fact and trying to better understand and look at it from both ways, understanding that the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
A head coach's responsibility is not just player development. It's not just scheming. It's not just, it's hiring the right people. It's understanding your players' strengths and their weaknesses and how, I talk to you differently than I talk to my wife, than I talk to my best friend. And I can be brash with one and I have to coddle the other. And that needs to be understood. But it's also relationship management and networking within the coaching realm. And the reason that we hired co-offensive coordinators is because Brian Flores ran through his proverbial Rolodex of contacts because nobody wanted to work with him.
Yep.
That's why we ended up with co-offensive coordinators, which is the worst decision you could ever do because you have too many cooks in the kitchen. We end up with Boyer as a defensive coordinator who, sure, Brian Flores was the one that was the defensive-minded head coach, but he's our defensive coordinator. He has no concept of how to scheme zone defensive reads or anything like that. He's sending the house every time and hoping for the best. And you just can't win like that.
Yeah. I agree. It was all zero bliss with Josh Boyer. And I think once Brian Flores left, it really exposed the fact that Josh Boyer wasn't the wonderkind that we kind of thought he might have been. Steve, do you have anything to add on this one?
Yeah, but first I have a question. So I definitely have my own thought about what has happened because I've seen enough of the quote from Tua. But what was the question asked to Tua to get him to say that? That part I'm not clear on. Does anybody know?
Yeah.
What was the question asked?
I don't remember the verbatim, right? But
Yeah,
essentially, Dan Le Batard asked them, said, towards the end of the interview, they were having a really great interview, and I think it was about 35, 40 minutes long. And towards the end, he asked something along the lines of, you as a player now versus where you were before, how did you overcome that? What were the challenges that you experienced, and how did you come out on the other? It was something along those lines. And
Okay.
Tua just opened the floodgates and was very brutally honest.
So that really doesn't even change my answer any. So how I interpret this is, and first I want to say Tom Brady said, "Get over it. It's tough coaching," or I'm paraphrasing, but it's somewhat along the lines of that. And I kind of disagree because there is tough coaching. That's fine.
Steve, I'm going to stop you there. Tom Brady is persona non grata on this show.
But I'm about to burn him right here. So he said, tough coaching, get over it. And my theory on that is, yeah, you can have a tough coach like Bill Belichick, that's fine. But Bill Belichick never told anybody they sucked. There's tough coaching, and then there's tough on somebody's mental ability to do a job that they're there to do. If my boss is telling me I'm junk at my job every day, I'm not going to perform very well either. So I'm at the understanding that Tua was saying, look, Mike McDaniel's telling me this is the perfect fit for me, whereas Brian Flores is telling me I'm a joke, like I'm not meant to be here. So to me, it's more or less just campfire talk. He was asked a question and he told his buddy how he feels. It just so happens that there's a light in his face with a little recording that's showing the world. And it's not really a distraction. If somebody wants to be distracted, I think we should be talking about why OBJ, not you and me right here on this, but the Dolphins community, they're complaining about this when I haven't really heard a whole lot about why we're paying OBJ to be sitting on the sideline with some sort of mystery injury. Shouldn't we know what's going on with OBJ rather than hiding that and worrying about what Tua's saying about a question he was asked on a coach 3 seasons ago?
Well, I'm not roasting. I don't think any of us are going to roast Tua for saying what he said.
Yeah. But the community is. I've seen a lot of the NFL community just burning on Tua over his comments on Flores, and I don't see it. I don't see why they would. Why it would be a distraction. It's something that was probably quick off the cuff, boom, boom, over. The internet's making it way bigger than it needs to be.
Yeah, that's what the internet does, right?
Oh yeah,
that's its job at this point,
for sure.
Yeah, we can get into OBJ at some point, but as far as Tua goes, I liked what he said, and I think it kind of at first it was jarring. It was jarring what he said, and it kind of reaffirmed how toxic things were and why it was so imperative that Brian Flores get fired.
And
I was confused about it when it happened.
Yeah, nobody wants a Bill Belichick answer.
No.
Oh, it was just football, and we're gonna let's talk about Buffalo week 2 or So it's just
that's the irony of him getting of people complaining about it, is because nobody wants the Belichick answer until somebody doesn't give the Belichick answer, and then all of a sudden it's a distraction or something
absolutely,
like that.
Anthony, absolutely.
Yeah, and I will let me just chime in here for a second, because I listened to Kyle Krabs. I follow Kyle Krabs, Locked On Dolphins, and all of the stuff he did, and he brought up a very, very good point. There was a lot of the media, to Steven's point, that was roasting, just absolutely destroying Tua for being candid and being honest and laying it out. And it's tough coaching. Look how soft he is. All this other stuff. It's old school coaching. But when you look at the records of the Bill Belichick's coaching tree from old school coaching, they have an average. And I'm paraphrasing. I don't have it all in front of me, but something like their winning percentage total is like 38 to 40%. So if you look at, and we're talking dating back to all the way, every coach that is from the Bill Belichick old school very tough-minded, hard to, line way of coaching, they don't win because the players don't respond. Now, people look back and they say, well, Tom Brady, and look how successful the Patriots were. Well, Tom Brady was taking pennies on the dollar to bring players in. They had the whole process. They would bring players in on 1-2 year deals. They would have a rock season. They would kill it. They would flip them, get compensation picks or compensatory picks, and just repeat the process because Tom Brady was making pennies on the dollar. And Tom Brady was willing to take it on the chin from Belichick. So because he is unfortunately the greatest of all time, all of the other players fell in line. But that's great for them, but that's not how it works everywhere else.
Yeah. I'm gonna end this topic with this. I'm gonna say, what this whole thing has reaffirmed to me, what this whole thing is kind of made me really think about, is how lucky we are to have Mike McDaniel as our head coach.
Yes, very much so.
He came in and took a quarterback whose psyche was just completely broken. He was beaten down, and you could tell he was just down on himself. And I think that kind of permeated throughout the building, where, it wasn't just the players in the locker room. It wasn't just the coaching staff. It was everybody. There was a reason why Tua was the subject of trade rumors for 2 straight seasons, because of the environment that Brian Flores created surrounding Tua from his rookie season on. And Mike McDaniel came in and kind of just completely flipped that narrative. And it didn't happen overnight. It happened over time. It happened gradually. But what Mike McDaniel did in making Tua into a franchise quarterback, because, like it or not, and I think we all do like it, but like it or not, that's what Tua is at this point. Tua is a franchise quarterback. He's turned Tua into a franchise quarterback. He's turned Tua into a passing yards champion. Tua is the reigning passing champion in the NFL right now. So let's, just take a moment and just give props to Mike McDaniel, because what he did was nothing short of miraculous in my eyes.